Eller.
All right, here we go. The Aeneid, Book 7, Beachhead in Latium, however you want to say it. Armies gather. Very fitting title for this one. That literally is the culmination of the chapter. Got some notes. We will work through the kind of overarching narrative here and what's going on, and then we have a few key themes that we're going to kind of zone in on. Um, there's a lot of biblical imagery in this one that is worth paying attention to and kind of zooming in on. So when you're reading it, be looking out for that. As we run through the narrative, be looking out for that. A couple other things that we want to talk about are just like the, in particular, flavor of spitefulness in evil, and in particular in this chapter that is embodied in some of the female characters, goddesses, uh, demigods, and then also some of the human women in this particular chapter. So that's going on, and then also sort of keep your Haunted Cosmos brain on in the background a little bit because there's some interesting things when these armies gather that we'll point
hmm
out towards the end too. But those are kind of the big overarching themes that we're going to be zoning on. We'll come back to those after we run through the narrative here.
hmm
So at the very beginning of chapter 7, first of all, I think her name's Kaeda, which is Aeneas's nurse. It begins with a funeral pyre for Aeneas's nurse. And it's interesting because if you look back just on the previous page, at the end of book 6, you have them setting a course straight to Kaeda's harbor. So the harbor where they land is the place where that ends up being named after Aeneas's nurse. They honor her, and then they move from there. They're technically in Hesperia at this point. They've landed in Latium, but they're not in the main portion of Latium where Rome is going to be founded, where they're going to establish the city. They haven't made it to the Tiber River yet. So they sort of land in Italy. They name it after Aeneas's nurse, and then from there they move on. As they move on, they pass Circe's Island. So Circe is just another name
hmm
that's thrown out there as if you should know who that is, and maybe you don't. So um, Circe was this demonic goddess in some sense that would lure men out to this island and then trap them and then have them change form into beasts. And so, and then she would cage them there on her island. So you have them turned into bears and lions and different things. And as they're passing by, they actually can hear the roars of these beasts and these animals that were formerly men that have been captured and are kept there. So it's kind of some of that Greek slash Trojan lore that's looming in the background of the story there. It's actually sort of a grace, a mercy of the gods that they push Aeneas' fleet past this, and they're not ever even, they don't even fall into the temptation, which I think points us to the fact that when when Aeneas descended into the underworld and met with Anchises, even though he comes back up and doesn't remember the experience explicitly, like we talked about in the last call, he is now set back on mission, and he is laser focused on where he's going, what he's doing, and the distractions are a lot less distracting for him now. So this thing that would have been, I think, earlier in the book, if you had caught him in, the few chapters previous to this, would have been a big calamity for the Trojans at this point, ends up not affecting them at all in this case. So they go right by it. Um, I think this is really interesting because at the very beginning of this, you have Virgil basically calling upon the gods to inspire his words once again. And I think this is Virgil paying homage to Homer. So the Odyssey portion of this book has come to a close. It's closed, and then we move now to the Iliad portion of this. And so you have this mirror image happening. You have the Iliad followed by the Odyssey, and then here you have the Odyssey followed by the Iliad. Um, so you have that break here, and Virgil, it's very similar to the way that he does when he opens the book, talks about how pay attention to the audience. He's saying, pay attention to what I'm about to say, what I'm about to sing of wars in a man I speak. Very similar to that opening portion of the Aeneid. You have that repeated here, and so you can tell that there's a hard break. Odyssey's over, the war is about to beginning. So we're moving into the war portion of the Aeneid. The Odyssey is at its end. Um, from there, you kind of have a picture of King Latinus, who rules Hesperia or Latium. He has only one daughter as his heir. Um, this daughter is a virgin. She's the only heir to the throne in Latium. The queen, so King Latinus's wife, Amata, wants her daughter to marry Turnus, who is not directly related to them, but is kind of distantly related to them. He's one of their people, but not one of their people in a sense. He's from a different tribe, clan, um, but he is of Hesperia. She, the queen, very much is a fan of the idea of Lavinia, the princess's name, marrying Turnus. But the gods have sent the king, Latinus, signs to warn him against this. They basically prepared his mind and heart for the arrival of Aeneas. And so he's looking forward to this, and he knows that Turnus is not the destiny that his daughter will fulfill. So there are a couple signs that are given to King Latinus. The first is a crowd of bees, like a swarm of bees, that come down to a sacred holy tree in their city, and they bend down the branch of this laurel tree. Shortly after that, you have this other thing where Lavinia is actually set ablaze and runs through the palace with her hair on fire, literally. And so these are taken by Latinus as signs justifying the things that he's been told. And from this point, after these signs are given, he goes to get more clarification. The king does. So he goes and seeks the oracle. So he's actually going to seek the oracle that his father set up. So his father is the one who established this oracle. His father isn't the oracle itself, but he's the one who established it, and receives a message that Aeneas in particular is coming. So he gives this description of what Aeneas is going to be like, and Aeneas is on his way. Um, at this point, we go back to the Trojans, and after they arrive and make landfall, they pull up into the mouth of the Tiber River and make landfall there, and then they are struck by this insatiable hunger when they get there as they're feasting on the shore. And Ascanius sort of makes a joke, like they begin to eat their plates because they've eaten all of the food, and then rather than stopping like civilized normal people would, they begin to bite the plates itself. And Ascanius makes a joke, and then at that point, Ascanius's joke, who is, if we remember right, Aeneas's son, also called Ilias, um, he sees this as a sign that they have reached their new promised homeland. Like they finally made it. Here it is. We're fine. We're here. All of this time we've been trying to get here, and finally, here's verification that we've made it. So, um, at this point, Aeneas gets really excited, and then Jove three times resounds in the heavens, verifying Aeneas's sort of recognition and vision of where he's at. So you have the sign that's given to them in this corporate setting where they all are struck with this insatiable hunger. Then Aeneas recognizes that, and then it's verified by Jove in the heavens three times, lighting up the skies with lightning and thunder. So at this point, Aeneas, his vigor is renewed, and he begins building his camp, and basically it's a fortress. And he sends out envoys to King Latinus. Latinus, when he receives the envoys, is struck by the fact that like this is the guy that's promised. He should come here himself. We accept him. We will make him one of our people, and I know that he is destined to sit on my throne. And so things are going great. Everything looks good. They've avoided this temptation. They receive these signs. They finally made it. The homeland's here. Everything looks peachy. Then Juno shows back up, and in her hatred for the Trojans, uh, it's in some sense like rekindled here. Like she's been angry this whole time, but then they just keep winning, and she keeps being foiled, and her hatred is rekindled here. In her spite, she realizes that she can't stop Aeneas's destiny, and so she chooses to slow its fulfillment and make the process of it coming to fruition as painful and agonizing and full of death as possible. The way that she goes about this is she calls on Alecto, who is essentially described by Virgil as like the demon of demons. This is the top dog, the sower of war and strife and brothers fighting brothers, and just all manner of horrific events are bound to come about when Alecto gets involved. And so she has this very famous line where she goes, "If I can't move the powers of the heavens, then I will adhere to, or I will invoke the powers of hell." And she calls Alecto forth. Um, I think this part's really, really interesting. We'll come back to it, but I want to touch on it real quick now. The very first thing that Alecto, this demon of demons, does is she attacks Queen Amata. Just the very first place that she goes to in order to like unfurl this plan of divisiveness and civil war. She goes to the queen, and she attacks her by way of a poisonous snake, which is Edenic to the core, right? So a woman tempted by a demonic serpent, and it's literally just the story of the garden retold. The enemy, in this case, Juno, and Alecto too, but mostly Juno. The enemy knows that it can't win, but it plots terror and death anyways.
Hmm.
It is well aware of the fact that it's not going to win, but in its spitefulness, it's like, well, I'll just cause as much wreckage and horrific damage as humanly possible, as my powers will allow. And so then you have the serpent tempting the woman, right? So we'll come back to that. But um, the thing that's interesting from here is that Amata immediately employs this very manipulative, empathy-driven argument to her husband. Don't you even love me? Do you not care for me at all? What do you hate your wife? Will you not listen to me? And so it is literally, if you've read any of Rigney's stuff or listened to any of Rigney's stuff recently, uh, White Knights and Reviling Wives, anything like that, this is an age-old play. Like it's not there's nothing new under the sun. It is exactly what we see today happening with feminism and all of this trauma, over exemplification and navel gazing. All of that is old moves. And so we see it right here in this founding work of the Western ethos. Amata's response is then to hide her daughter Lavinia. If Turnus, in her mind, if Turnus can't have her, then the only gods, and then only the gods deserve her. Now, this is super interesting because she goes, then I'll just give her to Bacchus, this god. Only he deserves her. If I can't get my way, then only the gods deserve her. And it made me think immediately of um, Christ rebuking the Pharisees for giving their inheritance that is owed to their parents to the synagogue and going, well, I gave it to God, so I'm justified. When in reality you're just abdicating your duty. You're just refusing to obey. She very much looks sincere. She's running around essentially with her hair on fire. Um, and she causes massive turmoil, not by bothering all of the men, but by raising all of the wives in the country. So all of the wives and mothers in the country turn into this feminist force of you can't control us, we're not going to do what you say, not because of any really good reason, just because we want to be obstinate and spiteful. And so, once again, play run on us constantly. So The quicker and better you get and more familiar with it you get, the quicker you begin to see it in your everyday life, which is extremely useful. From here, you have Alecto, and she goes and tries to tempt Turnus. What's really interesting is she uses this form of this old seer or oracle, and she comes to him in a dream, essentially, and tries to tempt him in that way, and he completely brushes it off. He's like, he's like, war's for men. You let me handle that. Like, leave me alone. Go back to whatever cave you came from. He just doesn't, it's not effective at all. At this point, Electo is furious and turns into her actual self. She is very much like, oh, what is the name of the
Medusa.
Medusa?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
I mean,
She
is she a
is,
Gorgon?
you could make that argument.
Okay.
She takes numerous different forms. Virgil says this, and so even the other demons are horrified by Alecto because she can take essentially any form that she wants. But her kind of form of choice tends to be this Medusa-like, uh, an entire mane of snakes. She's massive and horrifying. And when she changes shape is when Turnus actually is sort of poisoned and
Hmm.
and brought to anger. So he immediately like is calling for his weapons, calling for his armor, and he's ready to go to war because of this meeting with Alecto. So in the midst of all of this turmoil and strife, um, you have King Latinus, who is described as standing like a rock at the edge of the sea, that the waves and the breakers smash against, but can't move. And so I think there's something pretty honorable in Latinus here, that he doesn't give in to all of this manipulation. At the same time, he doesn't take a massive amount of action either. He sort of retreats and just holds himself up in his room, in his own chambers, and doesn't fight the oncoming tide. So that's something that we could definitely talk about. I think there's maybe some discernment and wisdom here if you're a man and you look around and you're like, this is not a battle I can win. Maybe there is time for retreat so that you can fight another day. But he also doesn't just give into it and go, yeah, your guys are right, actually. We'll just marry Lavinia to Turnus and we'll just kill all these Trojans. He sort of removes himself from the situation a bit. Um, Also, don't want to miss that Alecto also goes and tempts Ascanius to kill this treasured stag of the of the Hesperians. So this stag has, basically been raised in captivity in some sort. It's like domesticated, but it will still go out into the wild. Ascanius, Aeneas' son, sees it and kills it. But his shot doesn't drop it dead where it is. He basically gut shots it. And if you've ever hunted anything, you know that like if you don't shoot an animal in the vitals, you know, it might die, but it might take hours or days for that to take place. And so the stag runs off back to the stable and is found by the Hesperians, and this just adds to the rage that they're already in. And Alecto has done all of this. She is the operating force behind all of these things. So Latinus is not really giving in, but he kind of retreats. Right here, Virgil has a really interesting paragraph on the old ceremony of calling all of Rome to war by opening the gates of war. And this was something Alex and I talked about, but it's something that was a real ceremony in Rome. The gates of war, like Alex said the other day, like they never really closed. They,
Yeah, there was like a very brief period where they did at one point, but essentially, like that's I don't know if you call it the running joke or like not necessarily, but it's like that's kind of the irony of it of like they have these gates that do close, they just don't
yeah,
close because Rome is always on the attack. It's always conquest and empire building.
yeah. At this point, you have Latinus as the king is the one who should open the gates. It's his job, it's his duty. He's being invoked to go and open the gates of war, and he refuses. So Juno comes down and does it herself, throws open the gates of war, and the Hesperians are in their many tribes brought forth, and all the armies assemble. Um, I find it really interesting at this point that in some sense Juno realizes that she's like almost gotten in over her head a bit with Electo and she can't control her. And she's like, you got to go back to wherever you came from. Like, I'll take it from here. Like you're you're having too much fun with this. It's gonna get out of hand. Like I'm trying to wreak some havoc, but like you're you're another level. And so she kind of forces her to retreat back to where she came from.
Yeah, Juno's very calculated. Like she wants what she wants, and like she has her own idea of right and wrong, good and evil. And it's not what we as readers would agree with, but she has her set of morals that she's playing by, whereas Electo is kind of like a Joker
Hmm.
character. Like she just wants to watch the world burn, and like there is no good or evil. There's just pain, and
Yeah,
the more you can inflict, the better. And so yeah, it seems like Juno kind of like realized like, whoa, 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 whoa. I kind of let the cat out of the bag, and before I have no other choice, let me grab that and
get it back in
yeah,
control. Yeah. So, um, the ploy works, right? The entire Hesperian countryside is ready to go to war. On line 740, there's a really interesting quote about them beating their plows into swords
Yes.
because they are workers of the soil. One of the things that is a constant theme throughout the book is the richness of the land of Latium and Hesperia and how it produces an incredible amount of fruit. It's a very fruitful land. And so you have these guys who are very good farmers. Like that's what they're known for. They're farmers and ranchers, they're agriculture based economy, which all were at this time, but they were kind of the pinnacle. And so you have all of these farmers who put down their plows and then beat them into sword edges and are ready to march to war. So it is almost a direct quote from Joel 3:10. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am a warrior. So once again, you have this argument that like Virgil read scripture. Like Virgil's pulling from somewhere when he's doing this, and it's not just Homer, in my opinion.
and that makes sense. Like I don't think that's that big of a stretch.
No,
If you like, Virgil was a man of extreme learning. Like had like he was very very well educated, and this was in that intertestamental period. So like all the books of the Old Testament had been written. Those lands were part of Rome. So like it makes complete sense in my simple brain at least. Like why would he not have had access to them?
right? Yeah,
Like I don't have a way to like guarantee that, but like I don't know. The timeline flows, it all tracks. Like, and then like you read this, I'm like, well, I don't know how you would not think he read scripture at this point.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's he's essentially almost quoting the Bible. Um, so at this point, towards the end of the chapter, you have this list of the captains of Hesperia that are being brought forth in war, leading their armies behind them. And so it's not just one army, it's actually a collection of these tribes and clans being led by very particular men. And so I want to read the list. I sort of shortened it. We won't read the entire thing because it's lengthy, but the armies gather. And so the first that's mentioned is Mezentius and his son Lausus. After that, you have Ventinus, who is the son of Hercules. Then you have the twin brothers Catulus and Chorus. Then you have Caeculus, who is the son of Vulcan. Messapus, who is the son of Neptune. Clausus, a mighty force himself, is the way that Virgil describes him, which is one of the most base descriptions I think that you could give a guy. Then you have I think it's Halesus, who is Agamemnon's man and a hater of Trojans. So very interesting because Agamemnon, if you remember, is the king who leads the Greeks against Troy to destroy it. So this was Agamemnon's man. From there, you have Obolus, who is the son of a river nymph there in Hesperia. You have Ufens or Ufens, the leader of the most rugged men alive, according to Virgil. Umbro, bravest of priests. Very interesting that they literally have a priest who marches forward to lead men into war. Then you have Virbius, the son of Hippolytus. You have Camilla, who is this legendary sort of Amazon-esque figure, swiftest of warriors. And then finally, head and shoulders, according to Virgil, above the rest, greatest and fiercest of all, you have Turnus, who is sort of leading the captains who are leading their armies. Um, and that sort of ends the chapter as this description of these armies marching forward to come and annihilate the Trojans. And at this point, it is quite daunting because you have to remember the Trojans have been at sea for near a decade at this point, a long time. They've been traveling for a long period of time after leaving Troy as it burns to the ground. And during that time, they've lost men. They've lost ships. They've had to cut down on the people that are in the party and left some of them behind with I think it was Acestus. And so you have the dwindling of their forces all the way up to this point where they need them most. And then you have this enormous army that is led by a bunch of demigods, essentially, um, coming to crush Aeneas. This is why I said keep your Haunted Cosmos brain on in the back here, because you literally have all of the gods of Hesperia immediately called forth to be put down. You have Aeneas, who is in some sense in this story the messianic figure. He is the one who is coming to crush the serpent's head, and here they all are. And if this is not reminiscent of Christ's ministry, when he's constantly having to cast out demons, when he's constantly having to rebuke the Pharisees and face all manner of strife and adversity, um, because they knew he was the Son of God. Like, what will you do? What are you going to do with me, Son of God? Like, can I go into the pigs? Right? Like, this is this is the situation. You have the culmination. This is, in some sense, Calvary for the Trojans. You have the entire array of evil forces pitted against the one man, and it's up to him now to put them all down. Um, Really, really interesting because it's not just like a bunch of people that got riled up. You literally have the son of Hercules, you have the son of Vulcan, you have the son of Neptune, um, yeah, son of a river nymph. You have all of these men of renown and incredible lineage who are representing their household gods against Aeneas, who showed up with his. And Apollo is there with Aeneas, and Jove has decreed by the fates that Aeneas will found Rome and Rome will flourish. And then you have all of the forces, including Juno, who would stand against it. And so just super interesting there, the medieval aspect of that it's not just a man going to fight a war. It is literally the forces of the heavens and hell arrayed against the man who is in some sense like the the founder of a people. That's what he's there to do. And part of that founding is to marry a bride. And so you have this entire situation set up right here. In my opinion, like this is the most I've ever enjoyed book seven was this time reading through it because there's just so much biblical imagery. Um, in 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 some sense, the entire story of Scripture is told all the way up to, you know, the cross in this one chapter. This all starts. Things are going great. Like, Son of God has arrived. He's here to save us. Hosanna in the highest. He's the King of the Jews. He's going to save all of us. And then this this woman is manipulated by this demonic serpent, and that is the first domino that falls in this chain of events that sets everything on fire. And now you have all of the world is in some sense like at war, and the entire cosmos is involved. So really, really interesting. Um, the the imagery is just it's rich. Um, I I don't it's shocking how many times you can read something and not see all of that, and then all of a sudden it clicks, and now I'm like, maybe I should start the whole book over again. Because I how much have I missed already? Um, but it's fascinating. It's really, really good. Um, Anything you want to add to that, Alex, before we get to sort of a practical charge from all of this?
Mhm. Had you wanted to kind of dive back a little deeper into some of those touch points that we'd hit along the way, or do you think that kind of within the narrative we were able to wrap them up? Narrative wise, no. I think you know, great job recounting, and then like the sort of imagery and the sort of mirrors of the gospel. I think we got that hammered out.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we could dive further into Alecto deciding to start with Amata. And why does she do that? Why doesn't she, why is Aeneas not involved in this at all? At no point is Aeneas tempted in some way to abandon course. At no point is Aeneas um, sort of he's not tried in this at all. He's going about the building of the ramparts. He's going about building the city. And meanwhile, all of the demonic forces set against him are whipping people into a rage. And the place that they start is particularly with the woman. It's not just a woman. She's the queen. Like
Mm-hmm.
she is Eve in this scenario. There's no one in the scenario that resembles Eve more than Amata does in this particular scenario, and that's the first place that the demonic force goes in order to tempt essentially the entire country. Because she's not just trying to tempt, Amata. The point is for her to rile up the entire country. The entire land is at stake here,
Yeah.
and the place that she starts is there. The intent is for her to immediately sway Latinus. He doesn't give in, to his credit, but the first place that she goes is to her, and then the first thing that she has her do is try to use the weapons that are at her disposal, pity and empathy and emotional manipulation, in order to try to manipulate the king into abandoning what he knows is right. And when that doesn't work, the ploy is not to try to go to some other man. She immediately goes to all of the rest of the women, which is interesting because what she's doing is she's like, okay, well, this one guy, the first guy that we tried didn't work, but we can get all these other guys. And the way that we'll do that is by attacking their wives and their mothers and using
Yeah.
them to emotionally manipulate everyone there.
Which is the exact cultural play that we're seeing right now. And I think generally when things start to go wrong, there's some level of this throughout history. And it's certainly blatantly obvious today, partially because maybe it's more egregious, but also like we're living it. So I guess everything's more obvious. It's our reality right now. But it's there is only one play, and they're gonna run that one play, and it's effective. It's very clearly,
Clearly.
once once you know what's coming, and you've been kind of tempered in that fire a bit, then it becomes ineffective. But people either don't know or they don't have the will to just say, no, that's ridiculous. We're not going to do that.
Hmm.
As a whole, I think it's Electo. She attacks Amata, a woman, and leads her to sin in like the only like real effective ways that a woman can sin, and like uh, towards advancing some sort of nefarious end game. Emotional manipulation, this whole thing, and then she turns around and, out of necessity, she attacks Turnus, and she leads him to sin in the most masculine way possible. He just becomes wildly angry, and everything is going to burn. And so you have an interesting juxtaposition there too.
Definitely. The the thing that I will say, kind of moving forward when we get into chapter 8 and on, is to pay attention to the way in which each of these captains is put down over the course of these events. And something that Alex and I talked about yesterday was the fact that Virgil doesn't spend a whole bunch of time talking about how great Aeneas is. Obviously, we sort of know this, and he alludes to it, and he does say it explicitly sometime, but he doesn't spend as much time talking about Aeneas as he does all of Aeneas's enemies, which I find really, really interesting. And I think there's a principle
Mm-hmm.
there to like the greatness of a man is the thing that he's measured by is actually the obstacles that he's overcome.
Yes,
That is the
I think
nature of his greatness.
there's an aspect, I think, there as to why Aeneas isn't being tempted in all this by Electo, because he's already been through that fire
Mm,
enough. You're like, what are you going to do? You grow in proportion to the adversity that you face, and there's a certain point where things that would have brought you to your knees or led you um, to be sinful or just extremely unwise, whatever, they have just zero sway over you or impact, because of what you've been through and what you've overcome. And if we've seen the story of what he's done, the men he's buried, his father, the you know in many ways his own folly and sin with Dido, and like having to confront that and deal with that imperfectly. But so he brings this massive amount of experience and hardship to the table. And so what are you going to do?
yeah.
How are you going to get to this guy?
And
Like,
Juno's response at this point is like, we're just going to see if we can kill him.
yeah, I'm just going to make his life miserable. And
Yeah.
but like that's it. There's nothing left that you can do to a guy in that situation.
Yeah, in some sense, she actually doesn't even, I don't know that she even, her intent is really to kill Aeneas. I don't know that she thinks that that is any longer a possibility. In a different way, she's basically just going, you're going to rule without any of your friends. I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
take everything from you or that I possibly can because I know I can't kill you. Like I know I can't actually win. How much could I just hurt you in the
Kind of
process
like
of you winning?
a Job-esque situation almost. Like I
Hmm.
can't hurt you, but you don't. None of your buddies who have been here this entire time have to stand here when
Yeah.
you're ruling. Yeah.
So you sort of have the situation set now. And Aeneas has been warned about this over and over again that he would have to fight the bloodiest of wars to win a kingdom and to win uh, his new bride and to found the people that he's on mission to found. And and now you kind of have the entire situation set up for you, how that's sort of going to begin to unfold. Um, we knew this was coming, but now here it is. and this is what it looks like. Which is also another one of those things that I don't know if you guys are like this, but when those prophecies are read prior to this in the book, you're like, you'll have to fight this bloody war, and many men will die, and you just sort of brush over it, like, oh, that sounds bad, and then you just kind of keep going, and then suddenly you get there, and you're met with the reality of like might not be very many Trojans left at the end of this. And the gravity of it really hits you, how much carnage is about to unfold. Um, but back to Aeneas. As we move forward, I think it's important to pay attention to how how small the actual resistance is to Aeneas himself. Like when he enters the fray, he turns into Liam Neeson. It's like people don't even touch him. He just he
It's
just
not close.
it's not close. He just slaughters everyone. Like anyone that gets close, he is immediately the winner. Um, and it's brutal. One of our new favorite words. But um, I also I'm not gonna lie. First time reading this, second time reading it, I think this is the third time I've read it now. Um, I like Turnus. I think he's one of the most well written villains or antagonists. I don't even like calling him a villain. He's one of the best written antagonists, in my opinion, in literature. He is just the kind of guy that makes you want to like him. Um, the fact that he stands up to the initial temptation from Alecto and then has to like she has to dial everything to 11 in order to affect him.
She throws a flaming torch into his heart. Like it's yeah, she can't manipulate him like through human me. She can't reason with him and convince him to go to war. So she's like, well, I'm just gonna literally, or you have no choice. Like I'm taking control, and you will do this because I'm a demon goddess thing. But yeah, I it kind of kind of in a way is sort of like a no more brother wars type thing. Like that's like I look when I'm reading this, like that's kind of how in my head at least. I'm like, man, Aeneas is amazing, but like, could you imagine if Aeneas and Turnus were on the same team?
Yeah.
Like I have a super high opinion look up massively to like the Confederate heroes in the Civil War, but also like I don't know. I'm a massive fan of like Ulysses Grant as well. Like there's good and bad with all of it, but like I don't know. Like if they're brothers killing brothers in a sense, and it's tragic and it's sad. But like I don't look at like a clear cut. There's not like a bad guy. Um, and then that's kind of how I view it at least. And I know like Turnus is supposed to be the bad guy. Like events have conspired. Alecto and Juno have conspired to make him the bad guy, but hard to like dislike him.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He's one of my favorite characters in the entire book. And we haven't seen much from him yet, but we'll get to see a lot from him in the coming chapters. And he is a savage and not a coward. Like I think that's the other thing. Like a lot of times in modern writing, the villains tend to be cowards, which is not inaccurate. But I think that particular persona and character has been maybe kind of zoned in on really heavily in
The
our
Weasley
yeah
shift, yeah, bully,
schemer,
yeah,
and then immediately when he's met with some sort of resistance he just like folds. Turnus is not that guy. Like Turnus is a warrior amongst warriors. He is courageous to the very end. He never gives up. There are points where he's utterly cornered, but it's like having a tiger in a cage, and he is ferocious and knows himself as well. He knows who and what he is. And he's not afraid. He's not apologetic about it.
yeah. And this is kind of what you and I had talked about is how we were going to like wrap it up. So if you have anything else you want to kind of get into before this part, but so Turnus a bad guy that you generally think highly of, and overall, some exceptions, but overall, like that's the entire force of armies that you see marching through the gates of war. Like that's all of them for the most part.
Yeah.
They're all valiant, honorable men, and so they're all the like if you just read any one of those descriptions in there of one of those guys, you'd be like, oh, this is obviously the hero, main character of a story. And
Yeah.
like they all have their own lore that they're coming into this with, and they're coming into it to just have Aeneas's sword run through their bowels, and then they'll have their life drain out of them on a field and just be left there. Like, and that's the end of them. These like super valiant, honorable men, situationally brought into battle and bested. But my question reading this for me, and maybe this will make sense for other people, is like, what does that make me? Am I even someone who can march into battle and have my head cut off? And like, am I even worthy of that? Like,
Is it
is what I'm doing in my daily life preparing me to be, the honorable guy who is just a footnote in a story somewhere because he got killed early?
yeah,
You, you
because I think we always do this where we want to read ourselves into every story as the main character.
Mhm.
But there's only
And
one
there's
in
value in that. There
that's
is.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Like there's definitely something to I think it actually wraps back around, but like there's only one Aeneas. It's just him. There's a bunch of guys in this story who are, like you said, bringing their own lore with them through the gates, but there's only one Aeneas. And I like to kind of rephrase your question, like, am I even like is me having my head cut off even worthy of being mentioned in the story?
Yeah, yes,
Like, am
exactly.
I noteworthy enough to have been mentioned that I was killed? Like that I was a casualty? Or would it just be like, you're one of those nameless, faceless, like, yeah, this other like there were other people that died, whoever they were, right?
Hmm.
And so in some sense, extremely humbling, but it's also like a call to a very high aim. Like
Yes.
be worthy, like live a story, which means that you in some cases have to think of yourself as the main character. Like I don't think that's something that we can escape as human beings.
No.
Objectivity doesn't exist. Neither does neutrality. And so you see things through your eyes and your eyes only. And that's the only thing that's even possible for you. Which is why coming back to this whole empathy thing is it's actually in some sense not even possible. You can sympathize someone, you can feel with someone. We are called to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. That's something that is a Christian duty of ours.
Hmm.
But to a larger degree, you're weeping with them because you love them and you're feeling that with them, but you're not feeling it the way they're feeling it.
No.
It's
Not
not
even
possible.
close. Yeah.
It's not possible. You can't. And to act like you can is high-handed arrogance. So understanding that you are the main character in your story, while also being able to hold the foundational knowledge in the back of your head that you're not the main character in the story is extremely important. And I that's one of my favorite kind of practical things to come out of this is like live in a way that makes you worthy of being the main character in your story without becoming so inflated that you think you're the main character in the story.
Yes. And that's how things get built is you have all these main characters, guys that are pursuing that type of life coming together and then like willingly sorting themselves appropriately. And there is only one Aeneas, and that's good.
Hmm.
And so you get these guys holding these high standards coming together and then realize like we're not all the guy. And life is complex enough that like different areas of expertise and stuff like that, it's not just like a super simplistic like 1, 2, 3, 4, this guy's at the bottom of everything. But um yeah, like that's getting guys who can have that balance of like I'm the main character in my story, but like I'm a character, hopefully a character of value in the story, and just expand that all the way up to truly like the story, or
Yeah,
just I don't know what the job you're in, the town you're in, or whatever. Like the story of the school district that you teach at, Seth. Like you're a character, a valuable character in that story, but you're not everything revolves around you there. Um, yeah.
for sure. I think this has been one of the things that's been in some ways humbling, but in a much larger way, like encouraging about coming to Ogden, is that there's lots of dudes who are just studs. And so
Mm-hmm.
like you're probably not the guy in any room.
Yeah.
It that doesn't mean that you can't be one of the guys in the room though. And so like you're if we took Paul's exhortation to model him as he models Christ's, the point there is not to try to be Jesus to people, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't want to be like him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our overly pietistic culture has kind of taken that and been like, I'll just be nothing because I am in comparison to Christ. And you're like, well, yeah, that's true. I don't think that's what he's saying, though. I think he's calling you to be the greatest you that you could possibly be that would still not measure up to him. But that doesn't mean you're not trying to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not in a way that you think somehow that you would surpass him in some value or in any value, but that you would actually pursue becoming an image of him in a way where you think of yourself as the main character in this particular storyline. Obviously, this storyline isn't the main one, but it is part of it. Like it's part of this big rope that's being weaved together, and all of these threads come together to make this whole. And yeah, super like humbling, but also extremely encouraging too.
Yeah. This type of literature really kind of helps pull those thoughts out and those convictions, because like most of modern, whether it be books or movies or whatever, like nobody is identifying at all with the villains of a Marvel movie. It's like, well, yeah, of course I'm Captain America or
Iron
Iron.
Man.
Yeah, yeah, whoever they are. Shows how long it's been since I've actually watched one of those movies. But like, well, yes, of course I'm the main character because everybody else is super evil and retarded, and I don't want that. Like, obviously I could never be. And like, well, there's an aspect of maybe you're a little closer to that than you're thinking, but you know, there's nothing to like look up to in the bad guys. It's all just weak and bad, which doesn't necessarily make sense because like how if you have all this power, like it can be immoral, but there's like impressive qualities that you have to gain power. But anyway, there's nothing like what you nothing to aspire to relate to with these bad guys. So like you're just like, well, yeah, of course I'm Captain America. I'm whatever. And then you look in something like this, like, no, these are the winners and the losers, the good guys and the bad guys are both in some ways good guys.
Hmm.
Like if Aeneas wasn't there, then Turnus would be worthy of his own story.
Yeah.
And just go down the list. Like any of these, a solid handful of Aeneas's companions would have been like that. Any of these guys leading armies through the gates, they're all like worthy of that story. And so it's the credit to Virgil, that he's writing this in a way that you got guys who are ultimately not a significant part of the story who are making you think like, oh man, I can't even measure up to this guy, and he's barely mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful. We've been on this recording for a bit now, so I'll go ahead and wrap the recording up. Let us know if you guys have any questions on any of this in the comments on school when we get it posted, and we will try to wrap back around and get to those.